Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to the Quarantine Zone. Thanks very much for tuning in. I'm very, very pleased to have with me the mighty, very mighty Tim Garland. How's it going, Tim?
Very well. Hang on, I'm just adjusting the angle of things.
Yeah. Take your time.
There we go.
Give us a couple of thumbs up. As always, folks, let us know you can see and hear us all right.
Yeah.
As usual, Facebook's changed the way that live streams work, even since last week. So it's always good to know that it is actually working. Um, okay, cool. Yeah, so we got some people tuning in. That's lovely. Thumbs ups, folks, if you can see and hear us. And when we get them, we will steam ahead. Tim, it looks a little bit like there's kind of Christmas decorations.
You'd be right. Actually, we were so fond of these stars.
Yeah,
We moved to this house kind of about a year ago, and so had our first Christmas here.
yeah.
And some of the decorations never got taken down. So it's been Christmas all year. Our house.
Yeah, man, wicked. 2020, a year of just pure joy, you know?
Yep.
Um, okay, cool. Well, hey, people are giving us some thumbs ups, so let's go.
Cool.
So, Tim, um, do you remember how we met?
I think Asaf had
Yeah.
worked with you, Asaf Circus, and I was after a guitar player. And I particularly, as you well know, I'm interested in, kind of different tunings or maybe an 8 string or 7 string, all of the more unusual things about guitars. And as soon as I said all of that, and immediately mentioned, sorry, Asaf mentioned
Yeah,
your name.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Your demands from guitar players are extreme, to say the least. But
well, that's why I hired you.
yeah, I remember I was actually in Liechtenstein with Asaf doing a gig at that Tangente place.
Ah, okay,
And we
right.
just, Asaf was driving. I think we rented a car maybe from Zurich or something, and we were
Yeah.
driving, and you called. And Tim, I have to say, it's going to make you feel a bit uncomfortable now, but you're the first person who I've played with I'd heard of and who I played with. You know, you were so famous that I'd heard of you, and then the next thing I know, I speak to you on the phone. So so
Ah.
that was quite cool. I mean, I'm over it now, but anyway, but yeah. So Tim, there's loads going on in Camp Garland.
Yeah.
You have a new album, things like that. So do you want to give us the kind of lowdown on?
Sure. Well, about 4 years ago, I started this project, which had the working title of Refocus, and
Hmm.
that title just stayed the whole thing, the whole duration. Focus, the album that it's sort of based on, is 1961, really famous underground kind of hit album of Stan Getz, where he hired essentially like a classical film composer arranger to create string arrangements. And that's 60 years old. And I thought this is exactly the kind of thing that needs sort of revisiting in its concept. So the first track I just completely notated. Even the Stan Getz solo is the same. And so that's the first track. It's exactly as it was, more or less. I mean, I've added a couple of things. And of course, it sounds all hi-fi and 21st
Hmm.
century. But the rest of the tracks on the album just take little motifs, and as well as the string section, Asaf is on it, and
Hmm.
Yuri, my buddies. I mean, when you work with musicians for many years, there's a certain all of those things which are unspoken. They
Hmm.
garner
Hmm.
kind of a presence, don't they? That the rapport, no matter how great the musicians are, the rapport adds so much more. So these people like yourself now, you kind of get to know someone, you know the way they work, and as a writer, I think you end up writing better for them because you know them
Hmm.
personally.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, and that album, of course, has now come out. I picked up the vinyls and signed the first 100 only a couple of days ago. So that's the second vinyl that I've ever done, and apparently
The first one.
uh, oh, there you go. Which of course you're on as well.
Yeah.
Congratulations. So, I mean, that's another revisit because that one is called
Yeah.
"Return to the Fire."
Yeah.
The original album, which
Enter
came
the Fire, was it?
was "Enter the Fire," and that was 1995, and that was the one that got played to Chick Corea, Enter the Fire. So that was my entry point, I suppose, into a more international world. So
yeah, amazing. And the last piece on the new album, on the new record, is Giuseppe. Is that right?
Giuseppe, yes. So
Oh
that's
man,
the nickname for my son, and
yeah.
I had written that a while back. I've always found Brazilian rhythms to be some of the most joyful. You know, one of the people I grew up listening to was Egberto Gismonti, and it's yet another reason why I love the guitar is his music and that kind of beautiful acoustic groove, and how the guitar can almost sometimes be like the drums. You know, it can really be the clave of everything.
Yeah.
Which was why I was adamant to have you on the album, actually, because it was kind of like a bonus track, because Refocus, the 7 numbers come up to about 35 minutes. It's kind of a little short for an album.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do this very celebratory final piece, which used the same string ensemble. So I thought, well, let's take away Asaf, let's take away the drums, but add you instead, and also have John Turville on piano. So we got plenty of rhythm.
Yeah.
And in many of my bands, I notice over 25, 30 years, I've tried to avoid the standard lineups, because if you are using musicians of a certain caliber, if you take one element away, what happens is it's not a restriction at all. It actually brings out more in the people who remain. So, for example, Storm's Nocturnes was just vibes and piano and myself. Yeah. And of course, when you got Jeffrey Keyser with his amazing left-hand facility and the rhythm, of course, they're 2 very rhythmic instruments. They're both complete virtuosos. You don't feel the need for anyone else. In fact, not having drums and bass brings them out more. With Acoustic Triangle, it was, Gwilym, Simcock, and Malcolm Creed. Again, no drums, just bass and piano.
So it's really the removal of one kind of normally what might be perceived to be crucial ingredient is actually kind of catalytic for all of the other kind of components.
You got it. Yeah, and it's for me too. I mean, it makes me. There are no passengers. There's never a point where someone can just throw something away. And that I think is a great discipline for me. It's been a challenge that I've really savoured.
Yeah, man, you mentioned Gwilym there. It's funny, it's been a while since we caught up, and there's so many things I want to ask you about, but I'll try and kind of crack through them briefly.
Yeah.
So quick amusing thought on Gwilym. That was the first time that I played with you when he had hurt he'd broken his thumb playing football. So one of his arms was in a sling, and he was just playing with one hand. So I was sort of hired in at the last minute to be his other hand. So and then you wrote that piece, Solidarity Left, which we all had to play with only one hand.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious. Only you would do that, Tim. So that's an example of you rising to the challenge of a compositional limitation, shall we say. But lots of people will know you for your for being a tenor player, for being a sort of sax virtuoso and a sideman with Chick and many other people and so on. But it's your compositions that I think are particularly interesting. And Giuseppe, as you mentioned, the last track on the record, Refocus, the new record, is a kind of personal favorite of mine. Might actually be my favorite composition of yours. But I remember hearing an arrangement of Trinkle Tinkle, if I remember rightly.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Where you've done the same thing you were talking about, maybe, although I'm sure it sounds completely different, but operating more from fragments or motifs and really sort of rolling and developing them into unfamiliar terrain.
My ongoing feeling about writing for orchestra, because that's for kind of 35, 40 piece orchestra, that Tinkle Tinkle. In fact, I did 3 different Monk pieces, and that's from an album called The Mystery, and Chick Corea is one of the soloists on that too, which was wonderful to get him on, my recording. But that was the Royal Northern Symphonia, and with Tinkle Tinkle, I was taking the themes, but essentially sort of taking them out of their jazz housing. So it's a complete sort of reincarnation of the work. And for me, an orchestra should never really be used to kind of just make a jazz group sound expensive, and that's a sort of a
Right.
misuse. It should really be the other way around, that the jazz musician is invited into the world of the orchestra, and all of the color and all of the things that an orchestra really does best are preserved, and that we
Yes.
play to their strengths. Otherwise it just becomes kind of like a backing. I mean, we can all do that. We can all do the sort of Hollywood thing where you just have an orchestral sheen, and sometimes that's all that's required. But to me, a 21st century kind of move forward in music is to truly try and there's such mutual respect amongst the disciplines now to truly use contemporary orchestral music as a starting point. And then that way you get more nuance out of your soloists as well. They're listening and reacting to something which sounds, truly arranged with all the intricacies and multi-layering that an orchestra offers.
Wow.
And that's what I did with Twinkle Tinkle. So it kind of at times barely sounds like Twinkle Tinkle.
Yeah. So, anyway, needless to say, for a lockdown kind of living room collaboration video, there are no orchestras. There are no orchestral videos we're going to be sharing today, unfortunately. We do have a small band video, which we're going to play. And then let's talk a little bit about it afterwards. You can tell us a bit about the piece and... I love your soprano playing, Tim. I've done recordings with other sax players where they've had to pick up the soprano for a tune, and at the end they always say, "Oh, you play with Tim, don't you? I'm sorry about my soprano playing," which is quite good. I like being able to sort of undermine people's confidence, No, but so Windows. Sorry.
I mean, I played Windows, obviously, a fair amount with Chick, and we'd never done it that slow. I mean, with Chick, it's normally a 1 in a bar, so a good deal's faster than that. So I remember thinking at the time, it brings out different qualities in the tune when you really feel it as a 3/4, which is slower. And also the kind of Spanish element in that, in traditional Spanish music, and we were doing so much music of a Spanish nature with Chick. I was very influenced by that. In more traditional Spanish flamenco music, they don't really have a bass. The bass end isn't really covered. So if you notice, obviously, we didn't have a bass player in that version, and instead it's kind of covered by different members of the band, including the kick drum. So and one's attention is driven elsewhere, and obviously these days we have Carlos Benavent and many other great bass players who play in flamenco groups. But it should be the case that one's musicality should be expanded. If you just decide, you can always add ingredients and have more and more people in the band, but it's just as fun sometimes just to take one element away and see how people react,
Great. So Chick's contributed a number of, you know, tunes that basically everyone knows, everyone plays all around the world. And one of my favorite gigs ever that I've done was with you at Love Supreme last year. And it was great because Chick was playing there as well. And so you introduced us. I got to say hello and meet Chick and stuff, which was super amazing. And then actually, it was after, we sort of met them after they played. So it was even more like, oh my God. But when they played Spain, which I'm sure, you know, is maybe could be tiring, you know, I guess to play anything, maybe 1,000, 2,000 times, it's got to be eventually tiring. But people were chanting the melody and like the but it was like a football chant or something.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so amazing that, you know, the jazz coming over and good and actual jazz, what I would describe as jazz, coming over right into the popular domain, and that kind of like festival mass hysteria sort of excitement thing. Oh man, it was absolutely magic.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often.
No.
You know, I mean, it's wonderful being on the stage also, you know, because that would be our encore almost every gig I ever did, I suppose, with Chick. Not all the time, but whatever, over the 19 years on and off, I was working with him with different bands, about maybe 4 different projects. It was great to see this whole mass of people just suddenly standing up and clapping to a piece of jazz, you know. And it's it's making so many people happy, you know. I felt this before joining Chick's band, but even more afterwards, that one should aim that when people leave the venue, they are changed from when they come in. They should be happier people if you're doing your job right. You know, even if the music has a melancholy side to it, it's a kind of therapy to, it's like listening to sad songs. You know, you're not alone in the world. The music should, no matter how technical or whatever, if it has to connect on some lyrical soul level. You know, that's really, I suppose, what people remember anyway about the gig. The other thing that was good, I remember about the same gig you're talking about when we played at the Love Supreme Festival, was there were 5 of us on stage. We all knew each other pretty well. And a lot of the most memorable moments were those things that happened between people. You know, there's like, okay, there's a few fireworks going on. Jason, I remember, played like a dream. But it's that sense that it's a band, that people are throwing stuff into the pot, or they're maybe just laying out at just the right moment. And that's irreplaceable. You know, that's we've all had to do quite a lot of lockdown projects recently where people are layering, you know, one person puts something down and then later on someone adds something. And that's cool, but this is what we're all kind of grieving over right now, isn't it?
It's spontaneous music. It's interactive. It's conversational. It's
and it's got mistakes in too. I mean, that's that tightrope walk that we all walk when we're on stage. The audience feels that in the same when they go to see a great play, and there's no screen or anything. They're actually seeing human beings, sometimes just 2 or 3 meters in front of them, reciting, you know, being a character, and you sense the danger and the uniqueness in that moment. And I think that's the same with jazz. And you know, we are in many ways, I think, going through a bit of a grieving process, because I mean, the last live gig I did was late January or something. So you know, I mean, when we all get back together, it's going to be so special.
It will be. And Tim, I have to say, you've had your fair share of amazing ones. So I wanted to ask you, in 2 years of playing with Chick, there's kind of more than we could remotely hope to cover in one kind of, you know, in one chat. But a friend of mine recently sent me a video, which I think was at the Blue Note in New York, when Stevie Wonder was there, hanging out, and came and sat in. And I haven't watched the video yet, but he was like, "Oh, you got to ask Tim about this." So talk to me. What was going on? What happened?
That was at Catalina's. So we were in the, you know, kind of out there in Catalina's in LA. And it's quite a star-studded place. You know, I played there a few times. I played there when it was a smaller place with Bill Bruford a couple of times. And whenever Chick plays there, you can always guarantee, it's a bit like playing at the Blue Note in New York, that there's going to be a few starry guests that turn up. And it was, of course, wonderful to have Stevie Wonder in the audience. That's what I remember most about it, is that he came up on stage and sounded just like Stevie Wonder. It was amazing. And I was sitting on the stage kind of wondering, you know, as you do as a sideman, wouldn't this be cool? I could add something to this as a tenor player. And as time went on, I found myself just listening, and the whole thing went by and I didn't play a note. So it was like, you see the video and I'm sitting there all the way through. It's like, when's he going to do something? And I don't think I ever do. I'm just kind of like, I've just got the best seat in the house checking it out, you know.
Oh, man. Yeah, Stevie. I saw him a few years ago, I should say, in, I think it was Hyde Park, and it was just an unbelievable gig.
Yeah, he's got a great and mighty spirit, that chap.
Yeah.
And what he has done for music, you just cannot begin to say. The people he has drawn together, you know, over decades, it stretches from, you know, R&B and soul and jazz and disco and, you know, so much more. The guy is a beautiful human being. Just listening to him talk, he's obviously known Chick for many, many years. I remember that they were kind of in a deep conversation shortly before going on stage at another time when they all met, and it was just a very soul-based set, you know, in the sense of just souls communicating with each other. And you think this is what it's about, you know. It goes without saying that you've got to be somewhat on your game when you're playing tunes of some complexity, but it's just the way Stevie sings. It's kind of like, yeah, you know, if I'm playing Giant Steps, it would be kind of nice if I had something of Stevie Wonder, you know, the way of communicating a beautiful song, but still within the complexity of a complex jazz piece. You know, that would be a wonderful marrying of soul and technique.
That's it. Yeah, if you can play over those kind of changes with that spirit and that melodic sense of Stevie Wonder, I think you kind of complete this. There's nothing else to do. I think we're all sort of aiming towards something like that. But I just want to say a quick thanks to everyone who's tuned in. So we've Nathan, Sue, Brandon, Mandy, Andrew, John, Trousers, Ali, Costas, Martin, Susie. Thanks so much. It's lovely to have some, I was about to say friendly faces, but that isn't really what it is. Oh, hang on. It says broadcast interrupted. I hope it's okay. I think hopefully my wife will come in and tell me if something is wrong. Because she's just hopefully keeping an eye on it. So okay, a couple of lockdown formality kind of questions, right? So you're sort of known on the scene, Tim, for being a very positive, active person, and you know, to this very instant, I can see that you're, you know, you are that. How are you staying sane? How are you staying positive? What are you doing? How are you handling this situation?
Well, I think maybe the one big thing is to have a wonderful wife. And that's, you know, so if anyone knows of one, no, hands off my wife. No, hats off to my amazing wife for doing so much, because when you're in a lockdown situation, everything intensifies, you know. I'm used to being on tour. We all are, you know. I'm not used to being at home so long. But I had my studio built about 2 weeks before lockdown began. And that has been an incredible asset. Yeah, I mean, we moved house, and this studio was kind of 2 decades in the making, really. Just I always wanted to be able to do this, you know, working with a lovely grand piano and some nice microphones, etc., working from home. So I had no idea that it would be so relevant that I have such a, you know, kind of a great setup. So I've been able to be reasonably active. I've been looking at some unusual things as somewhat as a result, I suppose. One of the things is looking at some old Bollywood tunes, some from Indian Hindi musicals from times past, and it was quite a challenge. I've been sort of asked to look to see if there are ways of creating sort of jazz versions, and it's interesting when you take the melody on its own, because of the language and the way that the lyrics lie in Hindi, you end up with phrases which you just wouldn't think of otherwise, because it's so interesting how the language itself is dictating rhythms and a tradition which is other. I know that you have some experience with a lot of Indian rhythms as well, and when you sort of as a Westerner you start to reharmonize those tunes, what might have sounded a bit like kind of, I'm not sure if this is going to work, actually starts to be really hip.
Yeah.
And I think, okay, this has really opened my ears, so I'm going back to these early 60s Bollywood tunes and checking them out.
Wicked.
And I know. I mean, the obviously the video quality themselves, as was the case in Hollywood and anywhere, we've moved on a lot since then with all the dubbing and all that. But I've always been someone who's really enjoyed the eclecticism of everything. I mean, in 1989, I started Lamas with Don Patterson, which was a group which just thrived off trying to join various types of Celtic music with jazz. And it took me quite a while to get the experience and the confidence to approach what I felt as the kind of New York scene, and with Enter the Fire, which came out in 1995, as I said, that was the first time I really recorded anything swing and anything which kind of approached that main stem of the American tradition. Before then, for the first kind of 7 or 8 years of my career, I felt I wasn't ready to add anything there. I just simply wasn't ready. So, it's a mighty tradition. And I still to this day feel fundamentally European. This is where I'm being very eclectic and pulling musical influences from Spain and, the Celtic world, and as well as jazz. And in a way, we thrive off that eclecticism, I think, don't we? I mean, one reason I love the acoustic guitar, and your playing of it indeed, is that it's linked with folk music. So it's linked with music beyond jazz, if you like,
Yeah, amazing. We've got a video coming up which kind of really enters that open, rolling terrain, which we'll close out tonight with. But final question. I feel after talking about all that deep stuff, this is a bit silly, but what are you watching on Netflix?
Hang on a minute. I got
or Amazon Prime, or Disney Plus, or iPlayer, or knowing Tim, by the way, everyone, knowing Tim, he's probably just like reading poems and sitting in an orchard or something.
Maybe. No, I did see. Oh, crikey! What did we see recently? You've got me on the hop here. There was an amazing Japanese movie. Right.
Did you watch Parasite? Okay. That was
that Korean, is one, right? That everyone else has seen.
Yeah, check it out.
Yeah. Okay, I've got to see that. I'm trying to avoid. It's easier to talk about what I'm trying to avoid, actually. The kind of real sensationalist stuff, which in a way is just feeding the machine, feeding late capitalism in a way that, kind of you just feel you're being manipulated. I tell you what I saw last night. I saw The Social Dilemma.
Yeah, and here we are, back for more.
Yeah, well, indeed. I mean, this, of course, is the huge thing that we're very quick to criticize, but as one of the guys...
I'm not quick. I love it, but it's a powerful tool. It's like a chainsaw. You got to be careful with it, and you got to keep an eye on it, because what humans, what do we do? If we're allowed free access to booze at uni, people go a little bit, bit mental for a year, and then realize that it can be dangerous and kind of reel it in. It's the same thing, but I think with social media, it's a little bit new, isn't it? It's like a new phenomenon, relatively.
Well, you're dealing with sort of super robots that self-learn, pitted against teenagers and children a lot of the time, and of course a lot of us older ones. Now, we don't realize, of course, that they're building steadily building a profile, which is closer to what, who we are than we would ever have thought. And I'm very aware of that when adverts come, even if they're for something that I would like. The way that the advert is structured, the music that goes underneath it, that I'm being sold and manipulated something. And in a way, the music which we create, I feel, is a great sort of tonic for that, because I'm also involved in writing more commercial music occasionally, which kind of gets used on adverts and things like that. And in a way, you are very aware that it's a commodity and it's all about selling. It's all about getting something back. When in a way, the music that I am closest to, I can only describe it really between you've got your umbilical cord going straight up to heaven, and it's like it's really a conversation between you and the divine, in other words, you're not doing it for the money. It's like you're trying to hone into the mothership, as you play. And you're trying to garner spirits around you that are the same.
When you're trying to be like a conduit or a vessel through which the music flows, those are those things when it feels best, right? When it's flowing, when it's natural. And I'm very glad that The Social Dilemma as a movie has finally come out, because it is addressing in a very direct way that I think kids will understand. I hope that they will feel slightly appalled that they're being manipulated to this extent, because it's, in the end, it's sapping of one's own creativity if you're not careful. So hey, Nadia, thanks for tuning in, Nadia. She is giving a shout out to Better Call Saul, which I highly recommend. If you have, I'm sure Tim, if you haven't seen it, you're probably the only one on Facebook who hasn't seen it. But no, anyway, check it out, man. It's good. It's a really slow pace, actually, which is nice. And the shots, there's a whole sort of, for me, the element of cinematography is there that just isn't with a lot of things. They just haven't been done with a lot of care, a lot of shows. Hey, Mr. Cass has tuned in as well. Pete McCann, thanks guys. It's really lovely to have some guys and gals tuned in. Nice one, Tim. You're a big name, man. You're pulling in the viewers on Facebook.
Hey,
go you. So we got that got deep so quickly. We were talking about Netflix, and then we were talking about the umbilical cord to the mothership, and we were talking about that sort of escalated. But so on a positive note, let's tell me a little bit about Bright New Year, which is just this really joyous, joyous piece. And then I'm going to play the video, and then that will be it. So
cool.
So
Bright New Year. This was written a few years ago now, where I kept waking up with a tune in my head, as we sometimes do, don't we? And but it didn't happen on just one night. On the third consecutive morning, I still had that little kind of tune, earworm, going around. So I thought, this has to be a piece. So I wrote. And it happened to be New Year's Day that I decided to write this thing. And
can I just check? You're not just saying that. It actually was New Year's Day.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't happen that often. No, it was. Well, I mean, not every chord and every turn in it, but the main tune. Yeah. You know what? Years later, I was listening to a Wayne Shorter album.
Yeah.
And I think he quotes the tune. But unfortunately, the Wayne Shorter album was from about the 50s. So in other words, I don't know whether, I'm sure it certainly wasn't conscious, but there's a little fragment of Wayne.
Nice.
So it's, and there was also some Debussy in there as well. So it basically, it pushes the maxim that nothing under the sun is truly original. You just kind of take all of these things and you're constantly joining them together to create something new. But it's basically, in the same way that a great poem is you're still using the same language, you're still using the same building blocks.
Yeah. Hey, Tim, you've got a shout out here from North Carolina, Jasmine Lloyd. Hey, nice one, Jasmine. Thanks for tuning in.
How you doing?
So this is a really nice one, actually. This was my first lockdown collaborative vid that we did. Tim, this one we're going to play now is my first one, and it hasn't been sort of out there really yet. So,
well, wonderful, and thank you for what sounds so great about this is that you've tuned down to a low C on your guitar, and it's like, it sounds so fat. It's one of my favorite sounds. So thanks for being involved in that piece.
Yeah, man, my pleasure. Very briefly, I will share a link to one of these Bollywood tunes. Will you send me a link, and I'll share it in the link just in case anyone's curious. Yeah,
yeah,
and also,
left field.
where's the best place for people to get your record? It's Bandcamp, right?
No, if you go to the Edition website,
okay,
that's the
editionrecords.com, you'll find it, folks. There's loads of amazing artists there, like me. No, but there's more and more amazing artists. I don't need to big up the label. It speaks for itself. Tim, big love, man.
Pleasure.
Thank you for coming and hanging out with us for an hour or so, and thank you everyone for tuning in. This has been Quarantine Zone once again. That's us. Nice one, Tim.
Absolutely.
All the best, mate.
Enjoy the music. Thanks.